Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. As always, it is so good to be back here again with a new video. And if you are new here, hello and welcome. Why don't you stick around to see what kind of shocking true crime story I have for you today. And also please do subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. Alright, I hope you guys are good and that you've had a good week so far. And this video was actually supposed to be up last week, but I decided to put it off to this week because I wasn't really feeling well last week, but I'm feeling much better now and I am ready to roll. So with that being said, sit back, relax, and let me tell you all about the case of Tiffany Daniels. Tiffany Daniels was born on March 11th in 1988, and she was born in the United States in Dallas, Texas. And when she was in school, she always had a passion or quite an interest in art, and she also had quite an outgoing personality as well. And when her family and friends spoke about her, they described her as a free-spirited young woman who always knew how to lift the mood of anyone who was around her, and she simply did this by her presence. And Tiffany, like I said, had quite a passionate interest in art. So with that being said, she loved painting, and eventually she took a job at the Pensacola State College Theater in Pensacola, Florida. And this is where she painted sets. And when she wasn't at work, she would often take time exploring the cultural and natural attraction that Pensacola is well known for. Tiffany would also organize and attend blues and swing dance parties in the downtown of the city, which was near her job. And she also enjoyed hiking and biking in the Gulf of Mexico. But even though it seemed like Tiffany was quite happy with her life, she was experiencing some financial difficulties. And this may have had to do with the fact that she would often pay rent for a series of housemates who were either disinclined or were unable to pay their own rent. And her parents noticed that she had a pattern of doing this in 2013. And then on August 11th in 2013, Tiffany decided to have some breakfast with her then boyfriend. And she wanted this to be a bit of a farewell breakfast because her boyfriend had just gotten accepted into the robotics program of the University of Texas in Austin. And her boyfriend actually wanted her to move with him to Austin, but Tiffany wasn't really sure about this idea, so she was very reluctant to do so. And according to her friend, even though Tiffany loved her boyfriend and was willing to occasionally visit him in Austin, she wasn't ready to leave Pensacola just yet. So after her boyfriend left, a housemate of hers said that she seemed quite depressed throughout the day, but then suddenly she started feeling a little bit better at the thought of visiting her boyfriend in Austin very soon. And her friends also said that they believed that she would easily adapt to the town of Austin whenever she went to go see her boyfriend. Then later that day, Tiffany was working at the theater to prepare the sets for the production of Spamalot. And then on the night of that day, she and her housemate, 54-year-old Gary Nichols, decided to get together and watch Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which is where she wanted to get inspiration from since it's also a musical. Then when they were done watching the musical, they both went to bed because they had to wake up early for work on the next day. Then around 5 a.m. in the morning of the next day, Gary said that he remembered the door opening and closing a number of times. And then when he got out to go see if it was Tiffany outside, he couldn't see her anywhere. Then when Gary got up to go to work at around 7 a.m., Tiffany's gray Toyota 4Runner was gone as well. But he didn't think much of this because in his mind, he must have thought that Tiffany must have already left for work. But her parents, on the other hand, didn't really think the same thing because to them, this wasn't like Tiffany. Tiffany was not the kind of person who would wake up that early. She was not a morning person. If she had something that she had to do early in the morning, she wouldn't wake up in time. She would actually wake up when it's almost time for her to go and be wherever she had to be, but she wouldn't wake up that early. So they were concerned about this. However, Tiffany got to work right on schedule for her shift of painting sets. Then she went over to her supervisor to ask if she could leave work a little bit earlier than usual. And then she also told her supervisor that she would also need some time off, and it could be about a week. However, she didn't really say what the exact reason was for taking a week off of work. All she said was she had some things that she had to take care of. And then her manager said she clocked out of work at around 4:23 p.m. on that day, and after she left, this was the last time anyone had seen Tiffany, and she was only 25 years old. And then later on that day, her housemate Gary started getting a little bit concerned when there still wasn't any sign of Tiffany at around 10 p.m. He tried calling her multiple times, but she wasn't answering any of his calls. And then when he told his daughter Noelle about this, Noelle just told Gary that maybe he was just overreacting about the whole thing because Tiffany was an adult and she could have just decided to hang out with some friends after work, so maybe there wasn't anything to worry about. So Gary ended up agreeing to this and decided to go to bed. But then on the next morning, when there still wasn't any sign of Tiffany, he tried to call her again but still couldn't get any hold of her. And then later on that day, when Gary got back from work, he was surprised to see that the house electricity was off. So he ended up thinking that maybe Tiffany didn't pay her part of the rent, and once again he called his daughter Noelle to tell her that Tiffany still hadn't come back. And then he asked Noelle to tell Tiffany's mother about this, to contact Tiffany's family about this, and that's when Noelle decided to contact Tiffany's mother Cindy to tell her about this on a Facebook message. Gary's daughter Noelle and Tiffany's mother Cindy decided to go through a list of all of Tiffany's friends to try to contact them and see if any of them could tell them where Tiffany could be or anything like that. But unfortunately, none of them knew, or none of them did see her. None of them saw her, and they couldn't tell where she was or where she could have been the entire week. And they actually thought that Tiffany went out with another group of friends that she could have had, but Cindy and Noelle had already gone through all those people as well, and none of them also knew where Tiffany could be. And then by the end of the week, without any sign of Tiffany, they decided to call the police and finally report Tiffany as a missing person. Tiffany's mom initially went to the Escambia County Sheriff's Office, but when she got there, she didn't exactly get the best help. The sheriff's office seemed to be very dismissive of the case about her missing daughter, and even though they took information that she gave them about Tiffany, they seemed to believe that she could have just went out partying with her friends and she'll be back whenever she wants to. So when Cindy saw that they were not really taking her case seriously, she decided to go back home to the Pensacola Police Department to report her daughter missing. And this time it seemed like her daughter's disappearance was taken a lot more seriously by the police. So after she spoke to the Pensacola police, a detective by the name of Daniel Harnett decided to take Cindy, and they both went to Tiffany's house, and he wanted to look through the house for any clue that could tell them where Tiffany could have gone to. The detective found no sign of foul play, and Tiffany's tent was also still in her room. So this gave the detective the idea that if she did decide to leave, then she definitely did not go camping, because her camping tent was still in the house. And when the detective learned that Tiffany's boyfriend had just left the city of Pensacola the day before she went missing, he decided to focus on that fact for a little bit. Tiffany's boyfriend called her when he arrived in Austin on the 11th of August in 2013, but he didn't call her the entire day on the day she went missing on August 12th. And when Tiffany's boyfriend was approached by the police, he was actually very cooperative. He gave out his fingerprints and DNA samples without any hassle at all. And also when his cell phone records were looked into, they revealed that he was still in Austin the entire weekend. So it was unlikely, or it seemed impossible, that he could have secretly returned to Pensacola during the time when Tiffany went missing. Detective Daniel then started thinking that maybe Tiffany was depressed because her boyfriend had just left Pensacola. And Tiffany's sister also did say that she seemed a little less vivacious than usual. However, Tiffany also had plans for the immediate future. Besides the trip to go see her boyfriend in Austin, she also planned a dance in 2 weeks' time. So it didn't really seem like she had any intention of ending her own life or disappearing to go live off somewhere else to start off a new life. Investigators did also learn that at some point after Tiffany left work early, she did go back home, and her housemate Gary was there at the time, but he was talking on the phone with his girlfriend, so he didn't really remember physically seeing her in the house. Over the first weekend after Tiffany went missing, the case was announced to the public, and as soon as the media reported about this case, Tiffany's family and friends decided to put out flyers and also post them all around to raise more awareness about her disappearance. Then early in the next week, the awareness of Tiffany's disappearance produced the first piece of evidence related to Tiffany going missing. A friend of Tiffany's family recognized the Toyota 4Runner that belonged to Tiffany in the parking lot at Park West in Pensacola Beach near Port Pickens at the western end of Santa Rosa Island on August 20th. Tiffany had gone hiking in the nearby dunes of the Gulf Islands National Seashore, even though her mother Cindy always warned her against going to the beach by herself. And since Tiffany's car was found in the parking lot near the area, Cindy believed that something terrible had happened to her daughter. When the car was inspected, inside of it they found a bicycle, her phone, some paintings, a jug of water, as well as some clothes. Then when the car was towed to the police station for further examinations, investigators found 2 sets of fingerprints on the car. One was found on the door handle of the car, and the other was found on the steering wheel of the car. And this one could not be matched to Tiffany's fingerprints or any of the fingerprints that could have belonged to the investigators who were examining the car, which means those fingerprints on the wheel belonged to someone else. And when one of the residents who lived in the condos in the nearby area was interviewed by the police, they said that the car had definitely not been there until 2 days earlier. And when other residents were also interviewed, they also said they saw a man getting out of the car earlier that day. So now the plot of this case was starting to thicken. Who was this man? And why did he just abandon Tiffany's car? Did he have something to do with her disappearance? Does he know what happened to her? So this was definitely raising a lot of questions for me. So in order to find out exactly when the car was left where it was found on the island, Detective Daniel decided to have a look at the security cameras of the toll booths at the Bob Sykes Bridge, because this is the only road connection between Pensacola and the island. The security camera footage showed that the car was seen passing the toll booths at around 7:51 p.m. on the evening of Tiffany's disappearance. However, it could not be determined if it was her driving the car or if it was someone else. The car was kept in the police impound with all its contents in case something new came up and the car became relevant to the case again. The police wanted to keep their cards close to their chests to increase the chances of finding Tiffany wherever she could be. Now, the big question that investigators still had to answer was who the person was who left the car in the parking lot it was found in, and if there could have been anyone who could have seen exactly what this guy looked like or exactly who he is, because he was now a very big piece of the puzzle. Tiffany's family and friends also decided to go to the 2 large residential complexes that are adjacent to the island to try to talk to anyone in those complexes, hoping that someone could have seen something. They went there to distribute more flyers and ask more questions, but unfortunately they couldn't find anything useful. If you remember correctly, I did mention that one of the things that were found inside of Tiffany's car was her bicycle. Well, investigators found some sand on the bike, but they didn't find any sand on the floorboards of the car where Tiffany would have placed her feet. What this told Detective Daniel was that maybe Tiffany decided to go for a bike ride on the beach, and then after that she could have decided to go for a little swim. And if she did go for a swim, the detective also theorized that maybe she could have drowned. But there weren't any bodies that ended up washing up on shore, and this is very unlikely. This is very unlike a drowning, because once a person drowns in the ocean, bodies are always known to wash up on the seashore after a drowning. Another possibility was that Tiffany could have been a victim of foul play, but there wasn't any way of knowing this for sure, because the Santa Rosa Island is about 50 miles long. That's 80 kilometers, and the police just didn't have enough manpower to search the entire area. Then the weekend after the car was discovered, a volunteer organization known as the Class Kids Foundation, which was founded as a result of the Polly Class case, which was about 12-year-old Polly who was abducted and murdered in 1993, decided to work with the investigators, with the local police, and also the U.S. National Park Service, which has jurisdiction over the national seashore. So they all decided to search the island with people and search dogs as well, and a few fragments of clothing and jewelry were also found on the island, but unfortunately they didn't belong to Tiffany. And at this point, with all the search efforts and all the investigative procedures being exhausted as much as possible, there still wasn't any further evidence or clues that could tell the investigators what could have happened to Tiffany or where she could be. So now Tiffany's family and friends decided to open up a Facebook page to try to keep the search going. And this ended up getting them a lot of tips from a lot of different people. One tip came from a convenience store clerk who claimed that he saw her several days after she disappeared. And because he was able to recall the tattoos on her feet, this tip seemed credible at first. However, when the security cameras of the convenience store were examined, they could not corroborate this man's story. In January of 2014, a few months after Tiffany disappeared, her parents got a tip on the Facebook page that they believed or they considered to be a more credible report of Tiffany. A few months after she went missing, Tiffany's parents got a tip on their Facebook page regarding a sighting of Tiffany that they believed was a more credible tip. A woman who worked as a waitress at a restaurant in Metairie, Louisiana, just outside of New Orleans, reported that shortly after Tiffany went missing, she saw a woman who matched her description come into the restaurant where she worked with two other women. One woman seemed like she was roughly around the same age as Tiffany, but the other woman seemed like she was a bit older than the other two, and she seemed like she was also possibly a Latina woman, and she was also more nicely dressed than the other two younger women. The waitress said that the two younger women were behaving quite strangely, and they were also wearing long-sleeved shirts despite the fact that it was quite a warm day that day, and they also had the sleeves of the shirts pulled all the way over their hands. This woman said that the two younger women just couldn't seem to look her in the eye, and also it seemed like they let the older woman do all the talking for them. Then at some point, when the waitress made a claim that one of the young women looked a lot like the woman who was reported missing in Pensacola, Florida, they just up and left without any explanation. Now, it's unfortunate that the security cameras of the restaurant had been taped over since that day, so it was a bit impossible for investigators to confirm this woman's story because they could not look at the security cameras. But when it comes to this encounter, like I said, Tiffany's parents believe that it's more credible. They believe that this was their daughter at that restaurant, and they have two reasons as to why they believe that it was Tiffany. The first reason was that pulling her sleeves over her hands whenever she was cold was something that she frequently did. And the second reason was that the waitress said when looking at the menu for soups, the woman who resembled Tiffany asked if they were using chicken or fish broth with their soup. And when Tiffany's mother heard about this, it reminded her of the fact that there was a time they both went to a restaurant, and when they ordered soup, the restaurant had used chicken broth instead of fish broth for Tiffany's soup, and she could tell the difference, and so she couldn't eat it because Tiffany is pescatarian. This means she cannot eat any other meat outside of fish. So since the restaurant employee also talked about the same thing regarding the woman who resembled Tiffany, Tiffany's parents really believed that this was their daughter in that restaurant. Tiffany's family started having concerns that when she did leave Pensacola, she didn't exactly leave voluntarily. So with that in mind, they started researching about human trafficking, thinking that it's possible that she could have been a victim of it. They also started comparing this to the unsolved case of a woman who was abducted and drugged from Panama City and was taken to New Orleans by two men who told her that she was now going to work as a prostitute. So they saw some similarities between that case and Tiffany's disappearance. And according to experts, human traffickers usually target women in their late teens, but occasionally they would attempt to kidnap women around the same age as Tiffany, who was already 25 years old at the time of her disappearance. And her parents also believed that Tiffany's kind and trusting nature would have made it easy for her to fall prey to these kind of people. And I think it's also worth mentioning that Interstate 10, which passes through Pensacola and New Orleans, has been described as one of the major trafficking routes in the United States. But Detective Daniels said that he couldn't find any evidence that Tiffany could have been trafficked. However, they were not ruling that possibility out. After this, another tip that came from a woman in Alabama who claimed that she saw a woman who looked like Tiffany hitchhiking with a much older man. And she was also very confident that this woman was Tiffany, which got her to call the Pensacola police as soon as she saw this. Then after calling the police immediately sent out their detectives to go check this lead out as soon as possible. But when they got to Alabama, they found out that unfortunately this was not Tiffany. It was just another woman from Alaska who looked very similar to Tiffany. Then 2 years after Tiffany went missing, her family got a Facebook message from a woman who said that she believed that her boyfriend could have had something to do with Tiffany's disappearance. She said that she found Tiffany's pictures in his possession and that he did confess at some point that he had something to do with her disappearance and that he hurt Tiffany. And this woman also claimed that she had everything recorded on tape. But the moment Tiffany's mother Cindy asked if she could have this tape that had this confession, this woman said she would only give her the tape for $3,000. And even though this seemed a little bit suspicious, Cindy still held out hope that maybe, just maybe, this could be true. So what she did was she wanted some evidence to show that this tape was real. Then after this, the woman sent a small portion of the recording, and even though it sounded legit, Tiffany's mother told Noelle about this, but Noelle wasn't convinced that this was true. So she went to the internet and did some digging, and within minutes she found out that the tape belonged to a different case in Pensacola, and it had nothing to do with Tiffany. So obviously this person just wanted to take advantage of Tiffany's disappearance and make some money off of it, which goes to show just how low some people can be. I mean, taking advantage of something like this while the family is in distress and worried sick about their daughter is just inhumane. Then again in 2015, a citizen came forward saying that on the day Tiffany's car was found, they saw a man who looked like he was in his 30s, wearing red shorts but with no shirt, opening up the tailgate of the car. And if you remember from earlier on, I did mention that there was a witness who also said that they saw a man coming out of the car, leaving the car before it was found there. So maybe this could have been the same guy coming back to the scene. Like I said, Tiffany's family has since opened up a Facebook page, and it's it's called Help Find Tiffany. And I will leave a link to the Facebook page in the description box. And I know it would mean a lot to the family if you guys just went on to leave some words of kindness on one of their posts to show some support, because to this day this case still hasn't been solved. But Tiffany's family still has hope that she could still be out there somewhere. When Tiffany disappeared, she was 5'7" with blue eyes and blonde hair. She also has tattoos on her feet of seeds growing into blooming vines at the end. So if you or anyone you know might have any information on Tiffany's whereabouts, please contact the Pensacola Police Department on the number you see on the screen. But yeah, guys, that was the case of Tiffany Daniels. I hope one day her family will find answers as to where she is or what could have happened to her, because I cannot imagine how devastating it must be going through every day not knowing where your loved one could be. So I seriously hope that one day they will have answers. But that is all that I have for you guys on this case. Please do let me know what you think about it in the comments. And also, if you enjoyed watching, please do me a big favor and leave a thumbs up for the video so my channel could reach out to more people. I would seriously appreciate that. And also, thank you guys for hanging out with me today. As always, I do appreciate you taking time out of your day to support my channel. And again, if you are new here, please be part of the family and subscribe to the channel for more true crime content. That being said, I will see you guys in the next video. So until then, take care of yourselves, enjoy the rest of your day, and cheers.